Doctor Strange. You think you know how the world works?
When a terrible car accident robs talented but arrogant neurosurgeon Stephen Strange of the use of his hands, he embarks on a long journey to heal himself. But what he discovers is a little bit more mystical.
What if I told you the reality you know is one of many?
This doesn't make any sense.
Not everything does. Not everything has to.
Sky Cinema sat down with the stars and director of Marvel's latest outing to find out who is Doctor Strange.
Through the mystic arts, we harness energy and shape reality. We travel great distances in an instant.
He's a character out of the Marvel comic books, and it was made in the mid-60s, I believe. Quite a philosophic comic book, so in many ways it's slightly different from a normal Marvel film.
I think it's not your archetypal sort of superhero movie, is it? There's no radioactive spiders or surges of electricity or things like that. This is, it kind of has a different tone to it.
I didn't know much about him, I confess that openly. I was more into my Asterix and Obelix as a kid and Tintin and then a little bit of Viz when I was older, but Marvel Comics kind of hit later and I really came to it through the cinema.
I don't believe in fairy tales about chakras or energy or the power of belief.
I was aware of Doctor Strange. I read it as a kid. It was a little bit too philosophical for a 7-year-old kid. But at the same time, I loved the colors, I loved the magic, and I loved the character.
The comics always spoke to me and connected to me in a way that no other comics did. It was the seriousness with which it took the metaphysical ideas, other dimensions, mysticism, mindfulness, sorcery, magic, and all of that in the service of a character who went through, in my opinion, the most interesting origin arc of any character because he transformed through trauma.
You're a man looking at the world through a keyhole. You've spent your life trying to widen it.
You first meet him as this sort of brilliant but rather arrogant and lonely and egotistical neurosurgeon, and he's funny in good company, but he still ends up being pretty lonely as a figure at the top of his world, his profession, and he has this cataclysmic car accident which destroys his hands and stops him being able to function as a neurosurgeon.
Your work saved the lives of thousands. What if I told you that reality is one of many?
So it's really a story about how he goes on this journey to try and heal his hands and stumbles across, as a very last-ditch effort, this incredible person in this extraordinary place who teaches him that there's more to his hands than healing or furthering his own agenda and ego, and he goes on this very rapid, very incredible conversion and then pupillage through to becoming a sorcerer.
There is no such thing as spirit. We are made of matter and nothing more. You're just another tiny, momentary speck within an indifferent universe.
He had many villains he fought throughout the Doctor Strange comics, but he was always his own worst enemy. He was always struggling mostly with himself. And I relate to that.
You think too little of yourself.
Oh, you think you see through me, do you? Well, you don't. But I see through you!
Thought that there was a humanity to him and a relatability to him, even though he was in the most fantastical world.
What did you just do to me?
I pushed your astral form out of your physical form.
What's in that tea? Psilocybin? LSD?
It's just tea. With a little honey.
That's the storytelling I'm interested in. Very real characters, flawed characters, real drama characters, played by great actors who are working out their own lives amidst the fantastical.
How do I get from here to there?
How did you become a doctor?
Study and practice. Years of it. What the?
Finding an actor who could inhabit Steve Ditko's creation and don the cloak of levitation was always going to be difficult. But, lucky for Marvel, they managed to wrangle one of the finest actors to come from these fair isles, Mr. Benedict Cumberbatch.
He's one of our best, isn't he? And it's just the body of work that he has, and it's almost like, what can't he do? And it's just an amazing to see him helm this.
Well, first of all, he's a fantastic actor, and secondly, he's the sweetest man on the planet. So for a man who has a journey being so selfish and such an arrogant person, and has a long journey where he ends up obviously embracing himself and other people around him, he's just the perfect man for that. I mean, there's nobody better to play arrogant than a sweet person.
If I were to break it down, high education, high intelligence, you got to believe this guy is a neurosurgeon, top neurosurgeon in New York. Depth of feeling and range as an actor, because the character has to go through so much pain and suffering and anguish and anger and self-loathing, and into illumination and growth. And I guess also my belief that he could be an action star. You know, he hadn't done it yet, but I just had a feeling he could. And sure enough, he's a great action star. He's very agile and did most of his own stunts, trained hard. And I think he was surprised at how physically demanding it is to be an action movie star, but he is definitely one.
Action!
Stephen Strange was something that hadn't really clocked on my radar until I was on the rooftop, I think, of Bad Robot in LA. And we were doing a press junket then for a different film. This guy says, you make a great Doctor Strange. And I went, Doctor who? And he went, that too. And I went, no, stop, sorry, what? Who's Doctor Strange? I don't know who he is. And he said, well, you know, gave me a picture of the character. I said, that sounds really wacky.
Well, I guess I'll just have to stick with Nick.
Oh, wait a minute. You guys aren't
What?
sleeping together. Sorry, I thought that was implicit in my disgust.
Explicit, actually. And no, I have a very strict rule against dating couples.
Oh, really?
I call it the Strange policy.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad something's named after me. You know, I invented a laminectomy procedure, and yet somehow no one seems to want to call it the Strange technique.
We invented that technique.
Well, regardless, I'm very flattered by your policy.
This is an amazing character born out of the 60s, and Steve Ditko's artwork is still the most extraordinary left turn that they took in their comic history, I think. And it's stunning. It's abstract, beautiful, psychedelic, kind of mind-blowing fantasy art, and you know, very much within that folklore movement of Eastern mysticism meeting Western logic. And that was a very new thing then, the cultism and all the other stuff that surrounded it. So when Kevin first met with Kevin Feige, the real Sorcerer Supreme, the Papa Marvel, we sort of discussed what the context would be in this new landscape, this Marvel Cinematic Universe, and where the Avengers is going, and I was really intrigued by what he had to say. And then Scott Derrickson pitched me the whole idea for the origin story and the more fleshed out details of the script. And, you know, let alone the training, the kung fu, the wire work, the stunts, the dialect, the diet, the physics, you know, all of that stuff was wonderful. But the actual character arc that he goes on, from being this arrogant neurosurgeon to being, you know, a superhero who realizes a profound truth that it's not all about him, and he has to do something for the greater good rather than himself, when he could use his powers to heal his own hands. That really intrigued me. And the twists and turns are dark and comedic and every kind of flavor that you'd want out of any kind of project, let alone then when you add on all those sort of extra things, which I had done a little bit of, again, in Star Trek mainly, but yeah, we were doing it almost every day.
There's a strength to him, but is he ready?
That's it for part 1, but join us in part 2 when we'll find out a little bit more about bringing Marvel's latest big screen adaptation to life. See you in a bit.
Be careful which path you travel down, Strange. Stronger men than you have lost their way. I am death and pain. You'll die protecting this world.
I can't do this.
There is no other way. Stephen Strange. Might I offer you some advice? Forget everything that you think you know.
Welcome back. Now, bringing Doctor Strange to the big screen is no easy task. So, it's fair to say that Scott Derrickson had his work cut out for him.
I've spent so many years peering through time. looking for you.
Well, he's obviously got a background in supernatural, his previous work in horror, and I think he understands the sort of potential magic and suspense and thrill and comedy of what that can produce. And, you know, just personally as a director, he's very thorough.
Do that because you're looking at it sort of recognizing.
His attention to detail is, and he gives us the space really to improvise and try different things out. You know, I just think the marriage of that is. No, he's just done an incredible job, and it's difficult because when you often read things off the page on the script, you can't quite visualise what's going on. But having seen the finished product, it's mind-blowing.
The greatest joy of filmmaking is especially to be a writer-director and to write scenes, and then have Rachel McAdams and Benedict Cumberbatch light that scene up. To write scenes between Benedict and Tilda, between Benedict and Mads. Those one-on-one dialogue scenes, watching those actors elevate those scenes beyond the written word is the most rewarding part of directing. I was really fortunate because I got my first choice for every role. That never happens, but it happened on this movie.
He's great with character, he's a great guy to be around, he's the best first audience you'll ever wish for, which is obviously really supremely important when you're putting a character out there for the first time. And he knows the source material backwards. You know, people say, is there a pressure to bring this kind of, even though he's not that well known where he is known, there's a huge specialist interest in the comic world, as you know. And surprisingly, lots of young fans of him as well. It's not just people of that era when he was first drawn. So he took a lot of the heavy lifting on that. He had a huge amount of respect, as we all do, for the original material.
I want to be able to see your face.
He understands the universe completely. He's grown up with that as well, and he's a man who is in love with his character. So the whole craftsmanship of bringing the Marvel universe on the screen, he has that under control. Secondly, he's also a man on the floor on an eye level with the actors. So he's down there and trying to make all the scenes quite intimate. So he's a double director, and it suits a film like this.
What's this, my mantra?
It's the Wi-Fi password. We're not savages.
I found out that they were looking for directors. There were a lot of directors chasing this job. I met with them 8 times altogether. I met the first time, though, and was pleasantly surprised that my general attitude toward a Doctor Strange comic didn't scare them. You know, I was very adamant about, look, if I were to do a Doctor Strange movie, these are the things I think it would have to be. Because I love the comic, and I love what it is in the Marvel comic book world, and they seemed excited about that. So I left that meeting like a switch had flipped in my brain, and I thought, I'm getting this job, and I'm gonna out work and outperform and outspend everyone and show them, you know, what this movie should be. So yeah, I wrote a 12-page scene, which ended up being one of the set pieces in the movie, and hired very expensive Marvel storyboard artist to help me storyboard it, and yeah, I created several animatics of motion storyboards, and brought in a bunch of film clips, and described the other set pieces, and I basically came in and showed them what the movie was going to be, and why it needed to be that way, and luckily I got the job.
Scott gave me a phone call, and he pitched the story for me. Obviously, it's Marvel. We love that. Secondly, it was Benedict playing Doctor Strange, which I thought was a perfect match. And thirdly, and very, very importantly, he said the magic words, flying kung fu, and I was sold.
I didn't think Mads would do it, just given the profile of work that he has in film and television, and you know, I was trying to convince him about the character and the villain agenda and everything, and then when I told him he'd have to train for the fight scenes, he lit up like a schoolboy, and he said, wait, you mean I get a fight, like kung fu fight? And I said, yeah, and he said, well, that's it, I'm doing it, I'm in. That's all you had to say. I was like, really? Are you serious? He's like, I've always wanted to be in a kung fu movie, and no one ever lets me fight.
So much you don't know.
Since Iron Man's origin in 2008, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has gone from strength to strength, and on the evidence of Doctor Strange, it's not showing any signs of letting up anytime soon. So, just what is the secret to their cinematic success?
What do we do, Cap? We fight.
this is gonna end well.
I think Marvel has, you know, the greatest base of material to work from in the world. I mean, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is just unique. It always was in the comics. The way that those characters interrelate with each other within the comic book universe is just categorically different than any other type of comic universe out there.
I feel they make brave moves, and you know, I think humour is a massive kind of linchpin to that. So they pull you in with a bit of charm, as well as, yeah, launching some pretty profound and weighty issues.
Marvel seems to do something right. They have the ability to understand the whole complexity of a graphic novel. Of course, it's very tricky to bring that to life, but they have focused on the characters, and then they have specialized in the visuals as well.
Happily for us, we're in an amazing age of science and art colliding. You see that in the visual effects, which alone are just, I think, worth stumping up the ticket for. They are phenomenal and kind of groundbreaking for cinema.
That's the best you can do!
You had to ask.
It's all being run by Kevin Feige, who's a proper genius. And he operates from a very different place than any other producer I've worked with, and certainly any other studio head that I've worked with, in that all he cares about is the movie. That's it. He wants the movies to be good. He doesn't care about anything else. There's nothing else that's driving him other than the quality of the films themselves. And he has an uncanny ability to pick directors who are uniquely suited to properties that no other studio head would pick. No one else would have picked James Gunn for Guardians of the Galaxy, or the Russos for Winter Soldier, or me for Doctor Strange, but he recognized within us an innate ability to tackle that particular property, and he is a one of a kind.
Come on, Cap. Nothing.
It's all ludicrous fun, and I think, yeah, Stephen Strange is just a lovely dimension to add to the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
That's almost all we have time for, but before we go, let's catch up with what went down at the European premiere.
We've had Norse gods, we've had billionaire playboy philanthropists, but now we're moving into a new era, a new chapter, and Stephen Strange just makes the canvas a lot bigger.
Those who know the comic will have a little idea that it's going to be a trip.
It's original on a visceral visual level. There are set pieces and action that no one's seen before.
It would feel, to a degree, a little psychedelic, but hopefully not as much that it doesn't feel like a Marvel film.
It's going to be a feast for your eyes, visual effects that you've never seen before, something completely different.
We put a lot of hard work into this, try to do something unique and different, and at the same time reward die-hard fans.
It's a Marvel film that is not exactly a superhero film. It's about humans who are learning that you can affect your reality with your mind.
It's just very exciting.
When you open up a box full of magic, only the sky is the limit from there, right?
I'm growing a little tired personally of big budget visual effects movies where the effects are all used for destruction and gunfire and things that we've seen 1,000 times.
I can't imagine the pressure that was on Benedict, you know, to become this beloved character. I'm really happy for him that everyone's embraced his version, because I think it's just phenomenal.
It's amazing. It's like it's a proper trip, isn't it?
Just when you think a frame of a superhero film is getting a little bit full, we've just made it go.
Have a good trip, Mr. Strange.